Hello there and welcome to the Sports Payoff. I'm Kasper, this is Whit, and we're here to talk about sports. Today we're going to look at stats and streaks. First we want to start off by saying Matt Ryan, in his first 3 seasons in the NFL, he has 33 wins. That ties Dan Marino for first all time. Whit, do you think this is indicative of what is in store for Matt Ryan, or is this just some sort of flash in the pan hot start?
You know what? If it was 1 season, 2 seasons, yeah, I'd say it's a hot start. It's been 3 years. He's averaging 11 wins this season. I don't think you compare this guy to Marino at all. He's in a different era. So I would say this is good for the Falcons, this is good for the league, and I think Matt Ryan's going to continue this for years and years and years to come. Kasper, Arian Foster, he's only one of 6 players in the NFL to have 1,500 plus rushing yards and 600 plus receiving yards, and he was undrafted. What do you think about that?
Undrafted player amassing those kind of yards, that is phenomenal. As you said, only the 6th player in NFL history. Lights out. Easily the best season I've ever seen personally. I grew up a Barry Sanders fan, so I've seen some pretty phenomenal seasons from a back. But this season was lights out. And I'll tell you this, if he had been on a winning team going into the playoffs, easy pick for the MVP.
Would he be your #1 fantasy pick?
Next year?
Yeah.
He would be up there in the running. Yeah, I tend to look for the RBs at the first draft, so I definitely consider him. Although looking how Johnson played out with Tennessee this year,
True.
Kind of fell down a little bit. So it's hard to say. Could be a flash in the pan, but all I know is that this was a monster season.
Fantastic.
Switching to the NHL now, Whit, Carey Price has lost 8 of his last 10 in 4 straight starts. Do you think this is a bigger problem for Carey Price, a bigger problem for the Canadians, or is everybody in trouble?
You know what? I think everyone's in trouble. Carey Price started the season with Vezina-type numbers, and the fact that he's fell off in the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 games has dropped the Canadians from, I think they were in first place in the conference, down to maybe just barely making it. No, it's not good for the Canadians, not good for Price and his Vezina nod, and I think they better look into maybe getting a better backup in case something happens with him.
You don't think Alex Auld is capable of shouldering some of the load?
Not at all. I don't like Alex Auld too much, and he hasn't really done well with Vancouver. He did well in 1 year.
I was just going to say, is that heading back to your Vancouver days?
Vancouver, yeah. He was decent in Dallas. Alex Auld's a career backup, simple as that. So they need someone better to back up Carey Price. Nabokov could be a name, maybe. I don't know. Kasper, Colts, football, NFL.
Yep.
This is the 9th straight year they made the playoffs, which ties the NFL record. What do you think about that, and do you think they can go further, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years?
Well, the Colts are always in the running as long as they have the quarterback that is Peyton Manning. He did have a little bit of a struggle this year, but as you said, 9 straight playoff appearances. Unbelievable. I think as long as you have him, they could do it next year. And you got to remember, too, that this year they're playing with a lot of injuries, a lot of fresh faces. A lot of them are learning the system on the fly. Next year, those guys are going to be wiser, more experienced. Maybe they'll even some of the injured guys back healthy and playing again. So I easily see them getting to the playoffs next year. 11, 12, entirely possible.
I agree.
Keeping with the NFL, the Seahawks are the first sub-500 team to win their division in any major sport since the 1986 St. Louis Blues. This is going to segue right into our next section of the show called Hot Topics. Whit, do you think that the Seattle Seahawks deserve to be in the NFL playoffs with a losing record?
A lot of people have told me no. I've listened to a lot of analysts say no. I've talked to people that agree that they should be. You know what? The system's been in place for 20, 30 years. It's the way the division's been done. A lot of people want to change it. I think they should leave it the same.
Super. Sticking with the NFL, Favre has retired again. We wouldn't be a sports show if we didn't give the obligatory Favre story. So, do you think he is really done this time?
I think he's done. I'm sick of hearing of him. I know last summer when he came back, they were talking about the labor stoppage, and it was all about Favre, all about Favre. He has done nothing for the Vikings. He's done nothing for the league. He's gotten in trouble with Jen Sturger. With his play has been lackluster. I'm glad that he's finally retired, and
don't forget the new lawsuit just unveiled here. What I believe
a couple days ago, yeah,
with the other masseuses, massage therapists.
The league needs to really look deeper into that, and I think they should I think he should stop. I think he's done. 20 years. Too many
I think
injuries.
he's done too many injuries this year. It's the first year his body's really broken down. First year he's ever missed games. The Ironman streak came to an end. His body's telling him to quit. It's no longer a mental decision for him. His body is done. You can only take a beating for so many games in a row
I hear you.
and not be done.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to the Cowboys. Next head coach. Is it going to be Garrett or are they going to go elsewhere?
You know what? I'm thinking they'll probably stay with Garrett. I would like to see them go to someone like Tony Dungy, maybe Bill Cowher. Proven winners. Those
You're
guys.
name dropping. Garrett went 5-3 with his Cowboys, okay, since he took over from Wade. Wade Phillips went 1-7. New assistant took over the reins, 5-3. And in those 3 losses, they lost by a combined 7 points. Combined. They lost by 3 points, 1 point, and 3 points. They could have easily went undefeated with Garrett.
Thing is, though, they
Garrett.
beat a Giants team that was losing. They beat a Colts team that was injured, and they beat an Eagles team that was flipping between quarterbacks.
They beat the Colts, the Giants, and the Eagles. 2 playoffs teams, and 1 team that probably should have been in the playoffs if the Giants
I
didn't
totally agree
collapse.
with you. But you know what? A 5-3 team, if you times that by 2, that's the full season. 10-6 ain't gonna get you
and
in the
Pi
playoffs.
is 3.14.
Yeah, okay, but
Pi is 3.14. NFL MVP, who you got?
Michael Vick, straight up. Him and Brady are very comparable numbers. The difference is Vick has had a long year with the dogfighting incident. And you know what? He came back to the NFL. He came ready to play. Straight up, give it to Vick. It's all
And
Vick.
he only played in 2/3 of their games.
Thank you.
Just that. Yeah, he didn't play a complete season. You got to go with Brady. He's the easy pick. He's the obvious pick. He was phenomenal. I would love to go with Troy Polamalu. But unfortunately,
that's
he's
my third
probably,
pick right there.
he's
That's my
probably only
third pick.
second or third on my pick up there with Vic.
Me too.
Polamalu is a beast. Matthews over in Green Bay is pretty impressive. He'll get some defensive player awards here, considerations. So switching now from NFL to NHL.
NHL.
The latest trade with Tampa Bay's Dwayne Rollison.
Yes.
Who won that trade? Tampa, or New York, or neither?
You know what? I'm going to say Tampa on that one. Again, they're similar to a team like Ottawa, where they don't really have a solid number 1. They've got a really good team. They're in the top 10 in NHL. But Rollison's going to provide some sort of stability. I don't know if it's going to be long-lasting. The guy's 41. He hasn't played in a winning team in years. But yeah, definitely Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay's won the trade.
Tampa Bay, hands down. At the time of this taping, he just shut out the Washington Capitals. I just checked the ticker before this show. Shutout of the
1-0,
Washington
yeah.
Capitals. 1-0 in his first game. Going into this game, he had a .916 save percentage and a 2.64 goals against average with the New York Islanders. He only won 5 games and had something like 11, 16 losses, something like that.
Yeah.
With those stats, that's pretty impressive with such a terrible team. Moving on, sticking with the NHL. Evgeny Nabokov is looking to reunite himself with the NHL. Now, in order to get back into the NHL, a team can sign him, but then he's got to clear re-entry waivers. We saw this recently with Marek Svatos, signed by the Blues, picked up by the Predators.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with Evgeny Nabokov?
Well, honestly, I think he needs to get back in the NHL. Him not playing anywhere isn't benefiting anybody. If there's a team in the NHL that I could see him going to, I would say probably Ottawa. Pascal Leclerc's only played 14 of 40 games this year. He's had very poor stats. Brian Elliott's been in for the remainder of those games, and Elliott's been decent, but I wouldn't say Elliott or Leclerc are bona fide number 1s. So I would say try to maybe send one of them down to the minors, maybe release one of them. You'd have to trade a couple of players, probably to bring in Nabokov, because he's probably looking around $4 to $5 million for salary. But yeah,
He wouldn't get that. He's desperate to come to the NHL. If he wants to play, he's going to play for whatever they give him.
Do you agree with
not
Ottawa,
whatever he asks. Ottawa's a good choice. I was going to say Tampa before this recent trade, so Ottawa is probably one of the outside looking in playoff contenders who need a goalie upgrade. So
Yeah,
I'll agree with you on that one. And now we're moving on to the third segment of the show, where we're going to, of course, discuss the NFL matchups coming up for the playoffs. Heavy dose of the NFL this week, but you can't blame us. The playoffs are starting. It's got to be done. So, as we look at our playoff matchups, let's start off with the Packers and the Eagles.
Packers and the Eagles. I like the Eagles. I like Vic. I'm going to say Eagles in this one.
I'm detecting some homerism there for Vic and the Eagles.
Little bit.
Little bit. I'm going with the Pack. Okay, so let's look at the stats here. Before the season finale against Dallas, Philly had allowed 17 points or more in 12 consecutive games. They allowed 20 points or more in 9 of those 12.
Wow.
Their defense not their strong suit. Now they can run and gun with the pack just as much as the pack can, but the pack's got the defense. I don't think the Philly does.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
So move on to the Seahawks and the Saints. You got a sleeper pick here, upset in the making, or what do you
Actually, earlier today I was kind of thinking Seahawks home field advantage, but you got to go probably with the Saints. They're the defending Super Bowl champions, and they got too much. I just think Seattle barely got into the playoffs. They limped in. They're 7-9. They are a little bit banged up. They're not really sure who they're going to have a quarterback with Hasselbeck or Whitehurst. Straight up, I think the Saints are going to absolutely destroy the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Seattle. I mean, their choices are an unproven, young QB who's never won a playoff game in his life, or you got the old dinosaur known as Matt Hasselbeck, who's something like 75 years old and battling all sorts of injuries. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Saints there. That's probably the easiest pick.
Yeah.
Although, you never know. Seahawks could make it interesting. I just don't believe it.
True enough.
Ravens and Chiefs. What do you got to say about that one?
Ravens, best defense in the league, I would say, probably. That's my opinion. Kansas City Chiefs have been ridiculous this year offensively. You're essentially taking one of the better offenses against one of the better defenses, and I would have to say defense wins, and I'm going to take the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the Ravens as well. KC does have home field advantage, which is a major boost. However, the Chiefs just lost to Oakland. They're limping into the playoffs. Castle's still relatively unproven. He's had some flashes of greatness. The Chiefs do have Jamal Charles, who is a rushing nightmare. The Ravens are good against the run, but I don't know if they can hold down Charles all day long. I think it will depend on how much Matt Castle can do, but I agree with you. I would also pick the Ravens. And our last, and probably my favorite game to watch in the playoffs coming up, are the Jets versus the Colts. What do you think about that one, Whit?
Manning against Sanchez. I've liked Sanchez all year. He was one of my top fantasy picks. But we're talking about Peyton Manning.
How'd that work out for you?
Not very well. We're talking about Peyton Manning here. Peyton Manning never ceases to disappoint. He has been in a season like this before where they've kind of limped into the playoffs with not a decent record, and they still went on to win the Super Bowl. I would have to say Indianapolis, but it's going to be a close game. I'm going to say overtime on this one. Overtime, Colts.
Overtime in the Colts. I am going to go the other way and say Jets handily.
Jets handily, why?
It is a bold pick to some, I know, but the Jets are ranked 3rd in overall defense after this year. 3rd in overall defense. They've got, potential to do something with the offense. Every once in a while, their offense does strike some big points on the field. However, the Colts defense isn't very strong.
No. Lots of injuries.
Lots of injuries. Their offense is struggling. Yes, they've caught 4 in a row here under Peyton Manning to get into the playoffs, but they just squeaked in. The Colts barely beat the Titans in that last game. They won with a last-second field goal over the Titans. Titans aren't very good this year. So if the Colts are barely beating the Titans, they're not going to beat the Jets. And also, the Colts, when they played that Titans team, they allowed Kerry Collins to throw over 300 yards passing with 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
They can't stop Kerry Collins. They can't stop the Jets.
Still taking the Colts.
All right, you're here to hear first, guys. Thanks for joining the Sports Payoff. He's Whit, I'm Kasper, and we're out.
Take care.